This 22nd Parsha of the Torah is called Pekudei. It is this Parsha that the book of Exodus will come to its conclusion. And here is how Moses introduces his Parsha to us. This is the accounting audit relative to the tent, even the tent of the testimony, as the accounting audit was made at Moses' direction as a service of the Levites under the directions of Itamar, the son of Aaron the Kohen. Now Moses has called a Pekudei related to the structure that just built according to the pattern that God showed him on the mountain. What is a Pekudei? You know, the word Pekudei comes from a Hebrew verb root called pakad. Now, this verb means to visit, to pay attention to closely observe, and to cause to pass in review. The Hebrew Chaldean lexicon of the Old Testament interprets the meaning of this word as to strike upon or against any person or thing. Now, this isn't a violent strike. It's actually a poking or a prodding. Now, the Hebrew picture word is that of a visitation for a specific purpose. That is when someone or something is made to pass under a rod that is closely inspected, evaluated, and judged. Now, with that in mind, consider the image of a shepherd inspecting his sheep by having each one pass under his rod. This is the process. As each animal passes through the gate or a narrow opening, the shepherd's going to stop each animal with his rod and making him hold still while he inspects it. And while the animal is under this rod, the shepherd's going to do several things. Number one, he looks for special attention at the animal's overall health. Number two, he analyzes how much the animal has grown since the last inspection. Number three, he pokes and he prods the animal looking for any kind of problems or blemishes, or in the case of a pregnant animal, he sees how much the animal has grown in the progress of that pregnancy. He will also do for or to the animal whatever he thinks is right for its continued development in whatever he finds in this inspection. For instance, the animal may need oil, salve, or deworming. He's going to address that need. If the animal needs disinfecting or removal of any kind of parasite, he's going to take care of it. If the shepherd thinks that the animal needs its hooves trimmed, he pulls out his flint knife and he starts cutting. Now, this continues in the shepherd's judgment to the best interest of the individual animal, and the flock as a whole receives what is required. Now, while he's doing this, the shepherd is talking or he's singing to the animal, calming his fears, training it to know and to trust his voice, and taking this relationship with the animal to a deeper level. Now, for us, it's a moment of truth. It is a vivid experience of God's most intimate grace. It is an evaluation of the purpose of promotion or correction. Now, allow me to give you two definitions. Number one is the definition of the word galut. Now, galut in English means exile, and it's where a person lives in a very foreign world. Now, this world does not understand his way of life or agree with the basic life principles by which he lives. It also does not share his values, nor does it accept or appreciate either his spiritual identity or his divine mission. And life living in this state of exile is life living in a foreign land, among foreign people, and as a foreigner. The other one is the word gula. Gula is a Hebrew noun which is used in terms of covenant relationship. As a matter of fact, the Hebrew root word is gael. which means to fulfill a covenant-based responsibility. And it is an intervention by someone who has the power to do it. Whatever the weaker covenant partner's situation calls for, this man is called the kinsman redeemer. Now, this kinsman redeemer can and often does involve redemption and deliverance. And it redeems his blood kin from debt or slavery. But it also has another meaning. It can also be the blood avenger extracting vengeance. And that's when a blood relative avenges a wrong that's been done to his kinsman. Now, whatever character this kinsman redeemer takes, it's always involving a strong covenant partner acting on behalf of a weaker covenant partner in whatever situation that weaker partner finds himself. And this is done in order to turn the weak person's circumstances into good. Now, God made a covenant with Abraham and his seed. And in the eyes of God, this covenant is forever. Well, what happened when Abraham got old? God renewed this same covenant with Isaac that he made with Abraham. Isaac accepted this role of the covenant partner with God and walked in it. What happened when Isaac got old? God renewed this covenant with Jacob, the exact same covenant that he made with Abraham and Isaac. And Jacob accepted this role and walked in it. Now this time, God decreed that the successor of this ancient covenant would not be just one individual acting alone. It was at this time, it would be a called gathering of the seed of Abraham. And it's this start of the second phase of the covenant relationship that God determined in his wisdom, and in order to establish a pattern that would apply many generations later when there would come a third phase of this same covenant relationship. And this change would be mediated, announced, and explained by a specifically chosen and empowered human element or agent. Moses was that human agent that God chose to start this second phase of the Abrahamic covenant. Since Israel was living under oppression and exile, Moses' first job was to serve as their kinsman redeemer. But Moses' job as this agent did not stop with redemption. The main reason that Moses was called was not to redeem Israel from slavery, but to install this second phase of the Abrahamic covenant. Now, after the Egyptian army was destroyed, Moses' role quickly changed from an agent of redemption to the agent of mediation, announcement, and instructor of this covenant renewal. There are two coming patterns that continue through the Torah. In each capacity of which he served, Moses had two comings. In his first coming as a kinsman redeemer, Moses appeared to fail miserably. He killed an Egyptian overseer who was beating an Hebrew. And what was the result? First, he was rejected by his countrymen. Second, he had to lead the country under a sentence of death. But when Moses had his second coming as the agent of the kinsman redeemer, after a personal experience with the burning bush, he became empowered. And then he was used by God to bring deliverance from Egypt. Number two, when Moses returned to Egypt, these two coming things were repeated. In Moses' first coming with this new empowerment, he again appeared to be a miserable failure. Why? Because when Pharaoh increased the people's workload, they perceived that what Moses had done actually made things worse for them instead of better. As a result, they rejected him again. And the Torah tells us in Exodus chapter 6, verse 9, they did not hear Moses because of the bitter disappointment and the oppressiveness of their hard labor. But when Moses came this second time, he did not come with just words. He came with power and authority that everyone could see, and he used this authority to send a series of supernatural strikes against the enemies of God's people. At Moses' word, the plagues produced crippling blows to every part of Egypt's economic, military, religious, and political structure. And it's at this second coming that Moses found favor in the eyes of the people. And they began to trust his message, then followed him out of Egyptian bondage and walked on dry land through a sea. This two coming pattern, again, is going to repeat itself the third time in Mount Sinai. At the first coming of Moses at this mountain, Israel, upon hearing God's voice, would recoil in fear and refuse to move into the destiny that God had set up for them. Again, Moses' mission looked like it failed. They asked him to be their mediator, and Moses would be gone for 40 days. But when he left the camp to do what they asked him to do, they sinned with the golden calf. Now, this came Moses' third second coming process. Through his mediation of his second 40 days on that mountain, they experienced forgiveness and were now ready to assume the role that God had set up for them. They were now ready for the renewal of the covenant that God made with their forefathers and the start of that covenant's third phase. Do you see an establishment of these two coming patterns? Now you understand why Abraham had to appear in the land of promise twice, once in Genesis chapter 12, and then permanently with great success beginning in Genesis chapter 13. Now you see the same pattern repeated with Isaac, once before he was offered up on Mount Moriah, and then afterwards. Now you see the same pattern in Jacob, leaving the land because of Esau and returning to face God. Now you see the same pattern with Joseph, with his brothers selling him into Egypt and them bowing before him in Egypt. But now you also understand that this pattern is well established in the Torah. Why is this necessary? Because there's another phase in the covenant in the making. Yeshua has already come, the first coming, as the kinsman redeemer. And at the first coming, he provided redemption and deliverance. Now, what will happen on that second phase coming? It is written in Revelation chapter 19, verse 15, out of his mouth came a sharp sword, of which he will defeat the nations. He will rule over them with a rod of iron, and he will trample out the wine in the winepress of the furious anger of an almighty God. At this second coming, he will come as a shepherd protecting his sheep, and he exchanges his shepherd rod to a rod of iron to destroy the enemies of the Jewish people. If you accept the shepherd's rod, you do not face that rod of iron. Now, according to Revelation chapter 2, verse 26 and 27, if you overcome, you will apply the rod of iron. It reads, and he that overcomes and keeps my works unto the end, to him I will give power over the Gentiles, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall be broken to slivers, even as I received of my Father. Now, you have choices of two rods that you will face. One is the shepherd's rod. The other one is the rod of iron. Which will it be? Shalom.